think that having a leader who is a man of principle and who wants to obey the law, who doesn't want to spend his time dividing people, but wants to bring people together and develop a society which is fairer, which is a better place for people to be born into and to grow old in, and a society where we have security and prosperity. I mean, these are all things that Keir Starmer stands for. And fundamentally, when people see Keir and the way that he behaves and compare it with the Prime Minister, they can see a decent and honourable man, and quite frankly, what a better Prime Minister he would make.
When we see these figures banded around, 11% inflation, we know that interest rates rose yesterday by 0.25%. What would Labour do to curb inflation? How would you help?
One of the things that we were going to do, which we suggested should happen in order to help with the cost of living and inflation, was the windfall tax, which is not an inflation measure, so long as it's done properly. We also thought that the government should be cutting VAT on energy, because just as the energy companies have had a windfall because of the rise in prices, the government has had a windfall because of the rise in prices, because VAT is obviously 5% of the of energy prices, and we would say that we should have a holiday from VAT on energy prices too. We would, and then in terms of helping people with the cost of living crisis, we also think that it was wrong to cut the £20 a week on benefits that people really have been relying on, and we don't think that they should be increasing national insurance at a time like this, which is essentially a tax on jobs.
I want to ask you about the comments made by Andy Burnham yesterday, the Mayor of Manchester. You may well have seen them. He was saying that he doesn't know what Sir Keir Starmer stands for. He says he wants to know. What does Labour, what does Sir Keir Starmer stand for?
I think fundamentally what we stand for is a decent alternative to this appalling shambles of a government. I think that having a leader who is a man of principle and who wants to obey the law, who doesn't want to spend his time dividing people, but wants to bring people together and develop a society which is fairer, which is a better place for people to be born into and to grow old in, and a society where we have security and prosperity. I mean, these are all things that Keir Starmer stands for. And fundamentally, when people see Keir and the way that he behaves and compare it with the Prime Minister, they can see a decent and honourable man, and quite frankly, what a better Prime Minister he would make.
You describe Sir Keir Starmer as principled, decent and honourable, but some people do say that he has a problem with being perceived as boring. Do you accept that? And I mean, give us an example of what excites you about him.
Well, look, what excites me about him is that he's going to be the next Prime Minister. What excites me about him is that after 14 years of a Conservative government, we will get something different, that we will get a different way, that we will get a different vision, and we will be a government that will, as I say, be trying to pull the country together, and also be a country that can hold its head up high in the world, that won't be trying to break international law, that won't be laughed at internationally because of the way that we are. Will be a country that people will have some respect for.
But is Sir Keir Starmer able to connect with voters and enthuse them enough to vote for Labour? Because I think that's the concern people have, that they just find him a bit dull, a bit boring, and that he's not motivating people to vote Labour, not maybe perhaps making as much political capital as he should be doing right now.
So let me put it this way. After the 2019 election, we got the worst result that we had kind of ever had. I mean, people were saying that it was the end of the Labour Party, that we would never be in government again, that we would only ever have a Conservative government, and it would go on and on and on. Well, that's not right, is it? You know, just a couple of years later, we are 7 points ahead in the opinion polls all the time. We are, we hope, likely to be winning one of the by-elections, at least one of the by-elections in the near future, and we're in a different place completely. We are within touching distance of being able to make the next government. Now, that's important. That is really important, and it would be a remarkable achievement if we were able to get there. I mean, It's not as though we don't still have a great deal of work to do, because we definitely do have a great deal of work to do, but we're on the right track, and we're on the right track because of Keir's leadership.
Let's talk about the looming train strikes. Do you support them?
I don't think we should have train strikes. I think that we don't. What we need to be doing is we need to make sure that we get the unions and the employees and their employers and the government around a table and find a solution to the train strikes. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we bring all sides together. What we have instead is we have a government that is spending its time playing silly games, trying to blame the Labour Party for the train strikes. But it's not surprising. We've just learned, haven't we, that Linton Crosby attends the 8:30 meetings with the Prime Minister. Linton Crosby, for those who don't know, is a spin doctor from Australia. He used to work for the Conservative, or they call them Liberal, Prime Minister in Australia. In February of this year, guess what? They had a train strike. Guess what the government did? The government blamed the Labour Party and refused to get involved. This is the same playbook. This is what they're doing. They're playing games. And frankly, we will all be suffering as a result next week when there are train strikes, because the government has refused to even speak to the unions since March.
So just to be clear, what is more important to Labour? Is it the unions or the passengers?
For heaven's sake. What's more important is that we don't have strikes, that a lowly paid cleaner who cleans out the loos in the carriages on our trains gets a wage that she can make sure that she can meet her bills. With inflation at 11%, there needs to be negotiation, and there needs to be a decent amount of money paid to workers so that they can look after themselves and their families. That is not too much to ask. The problem is that all of this is against a background of the pandemic, when many train companies obviously had their incomes slashed because people weren't travelling on the trains. They are in many ways oversteering, in my opinion, and cutting back on the number of routes, the number of jobs, and they're not paying their staff sufficiently. We need to have government involved in this, government at the table, taking a strategic look at where are our railways going? What will happen to our railways in the future? Is it right for us to be cutting back on routes? Do the railway companies need more support? How important and strategic is the railway industry to our country? I would suggest it is. Government needs to be involved and be doing more than playing games, trying to blame the Labour Party. This is what we would be doing if we were in government. Unfortunately, we're not. And instead, we have a government that seems to treat politics like it's not about making a difference, it's about making petty party political points. And as I said, we have the heavy hand of Linton Crosby on all of this.
Finally, Emily Thornberry, I want to ask you, I know that you've submitted a letter to Boris Johnson along with a number of other MPs. Just explain to us a little bit about that and what it's calling for.
Yeah. So we are very concerned that the rules are about to change, it will allow an alleged perpetrator of a rape to get access to his victim's medical notes, and particularly the notes if she's been to therapy. And it'll make it easier for him to get access to that. And we think that the Attorney General is making a big mistake in changing the rules in the way that she was proposed that she will do at the end of this month. So I have written, along with 97 other women Labour MPs, to the Prime Minister to say, please look at this. One of us raised it with him at Prime Minister's Questions. He seemed to be quite surprised to hear this is what was happening, and he seemed to be interested in making sure that he looked into it. So we've written to him to remind him that that's what he said, and to give him more information, and to ask him genuinely, look at this. This is a big mistake. Only 1.5% of rapes end up with actually going to court. How much more difficult do you want to make a victim's life? If she really thinks that if she helps the police, if she goes ahead with the prosecution, that her therapy notes are going to be given to the rapist.